to kind of throw you back to memory lane for some of you. But for example, if there's 5 generations in this body, then that means there's been 5 generations of music styles. And so some of us have grown up on Hee Haw, some on the Lawrence Welk Show, some on Solid Gold Saturday Night, with the Solid Gold dancers. Some have been on MTV back when it was actually music videos on MTV. You might remember that. There was actually music videos on MTV. VH1. Some of you remember Dick Clark. Some of you grew up on now we have iTunes, we have Spotify. We're right there on this small little contraption here called the iPhone or whatever you have, where you can carry a huge library of music around with you, just like this. And so there's been all kinds of stuff. Some of us grew up on Elvis, on Buddy Holly, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and of course, Hey Hey, we're the Monkees, right? Some of us were Hank Williams, some were Hank Williams Jr., some were the George Strait fans, the Willie Nelson fans, and now we got the Zac Brown fans. We have Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, James Brown, and Tina Turner. We've had Michael Jackson. We've had the Backstreet Boys. We had New Kids on the Block, and we've had Wham. We've had Notorious Big. We've had Jay-Z and MC Hammer with his hammer pants. We've had Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, AC/DC, Coldplay, U2, Mumford & Sons, and a whole lot more. And then how can we forget probably, arguably, the most incredible singer-songwriter of all time. I cannot believe I've left him out, but you all know who I'm talking about as soon as I say it, Barry Manilow. I write the songs that makes the whole world sing. Everybody sing with me. I write the songs of love and special things. I write the songs that make the young girls cry. I write the songs. That's the way it ends anyway. So how can we forget Barry Manilow? Because he's wrote all the songs apparently. Then we have our language barriers. Lots of language barriers. For example, in all the different generations that are in one church, you talk about those sparks, so to speak, just use the word pot, for example. Pot is something we cook in. Pot is something that if you don't have a lot of money, you can't afford because you don't have one to actually, use the bathroom in. I won't use the normal phrase because my mom does attend here. But, I don't have a pot to go to the bathroom in. And now pot is something that can be used for medicinal purposes or recreational purposes. Same word, 3 different meanings. There's other words. For example, goat. To many of us, a goat is a farm animal. But now goat means the greatest of all time. How about troll? Speaking of goats, I grew up to the story of the Billy Goat's Gruff. The Billy Goat's Gruff, you wanted to get across that bridge because under that bridge was a troll. But now that's not what a troll means. A troll now is someone who goes onto social media and they'll go onto an account just to kind of create discord or all kinds of arguments and fighting and all kinds of things. They'll even take you off topic just to get you off. That's a troll. Then there's woke. Everybody know woke? Woke is someone who's become highly aware of social issues. For my generation, woke means I got up and out of bed. Ghost, that was something that was scary as a kid. But to be ghosted today, that's not a good thing. Because that means all of a sudden, not only have they cut you off, they're not talking to you anymore, but you don't hear from them anymore. They've just disappeared off the face of the earth. Here's another one. Getting together to watch some Netflix and chill. Now, for my generation to get together and watch Netflix and chill, that means Cindy and I getting some popcorn, watching The Crown, binge watching The Crown, and falling asleep on the recliner. But there's the younger generation to get together and watch some Netflix and chill. Well, that means a whole different thing. So for those of you who don't know that, I'm telling you that. It basically means what used to mean in my generation is going parking, if you know what I mean. You go parking, Inspiration Point, I found my thrill, that kind of thing. That is Netflix and chill today. What a difference. And then we have the argument of, my generation had it so much harder than yours. I mean, back in my day, when I was your age, and just this week, we saw this. The Kentucky governor who got into some trouble, and I've heard that he's gotten into some trouble quite a bit, but he got into trouble because he basically said that, closing schools were getting soft. Matter of fact, his quote was, schools today are getting too soft because they are canceling due to the cold. What he's basically saying there is, back in my day, you know what I'm talking about? And we all kind of, you got to give him a little bit of slack because we all know what that day was. Because we remember that infamous treacherous walk that many of our grandparents and parents had to make to school, up the hill, both ways, in the snow, barefoot. How many of you have heard that? Did we all have the same ancestors? Did we find this out on Ancestry.com? I mean, apparently, we've all experienced it. When you have 5 generations under one roof, you hear that when I was your age, you hear a lot of things. When I was your age, I had social network too, but it's called going outside and playing with my neighbors. Well, back in my day, to shuffle music in my car required a little bit more than just a little, this. It actually was you needed, if you wanted to shuffle music, you need to have some space, you need to pull off the side of the road, and you had to do a lot of shuffling in order to find music back. Now, those boys and girls are CDs, okay? Those are CDs. They're these things that, anyway. But anyway, so how about this one? Well, kids these days have no idea how good they got it. When I was a kid, I had to walk 9 feet to the television both ways, barefoot, through shag carpet. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody had to do that? We have to actually get up, go to the television, turn the channel, then go back barefoot across shag carpet. So see, kids these days, they got so easy. 5 generations here at the Crossing, there's been a lot of different experiences, a lot of different phases, and a whole lot of fads. Now, a fad is a style or an activity that suddenly becomes popular, and usually that popularity doesn't last very long. As a matter of fact, it may come back around, or we may never want to actually experience that fad ever again. Now, I asked this week for a little bit of help, and whenever I ask for a little bit of help from this group, I get a lot of help. I asked if you could share some phases you went through. Some of you read phrases. It was actually phases, so I got some phrases and some phases. But I'm not going to use the phrases. I'll save them for another sermon. But I want to know kind of some phases and fads. I put this up, I think, on Wednesday morning, and by noon I had almost 100 responses. So here's a few of them. First of all, hairstyles. Remember your hairstyles. We've had big hair. We've had perms. We had mullets. I got married in a mullet. I had a mullet, all right? Organized, business in the front, party in the back. I had it. Slick back, parted, feathered, hair down the middle. Clothing styles, we had Letterman jackets, bell-bottom jeans, corduroy denim, or corduroys, denim, leather jackets like the Fonz from Happy Days. And then the parachute and hammer pants, And then we can't forget the leisure suits. Then we had the phases like the hippie phase, the rebellious phase, the flash dance phase, I can't do that. The grunge phase, the skateboarder phase, the gothic phase, the emo phase, and then the Miami Vice phase. You remember the Miami Vice phase? Matter of fact, my very first sermon, that's my first sermon preached in my first international sermon in Jamaica right there. Notice I've got the Don Johnson Miami Vice thing going with the blue pants and the matching blue thin tie. All right? I mean, I was bringing it that day. I'll just tell you, I was bringing it. Then you go with the shoes. You got the penny loafers, the jelly shoes, the clogs, the platform shoes, the snakeskin boots, the Chucks, the Converse, the Crocs, the Bobby socks and saddle shoes, and the Heelys. Remember the Heelys? Anybody have Heelys here? No, they're all over in the elementary building right now. And Casey in the back. Sorry, Casey. But Heelys, they were the ones that had the roller skate in the very back, and they'd all go rolling through with the Heelys, okay? Then we had socks, tube socks. See this over here? There's Hud on the left. There's Kenny on the right. Okay, we actually played on the same team, but he was a freshman. I was a senior, so that should tell you who the real athlete in this staff is. But we're still on the same team, and I can tell you this team is winning a whole lot more than that team did, all right? But anyway, notice how we were wearing the socks up high. But my brother, who was just a few years younger, all of a sudden he came in, and that was when they were starting to shove the tube socks way down to make them look real baggy like at the bottom. And then sometimes we would roll. Did you ever try to roll your tube socks to where it looked like little elves, like little rolls? You know what I'm talking about? And then there went with the no tube socks, the no sock, the no show sock, or show sock. And so we've had that. We've had headwear like bandanas and berets and trucker hats and flat bills and snapbacks and all kinds of things like that. And then we had the fads like the Beanie Babies, the Furbies, the Troll Dolls, and pet rocks. How many of you had a pet rock? Anybody have a pet rock? Go ahead, you can admit it. Is it still alive? I just want to know. Is the rock still alive? Slinkies, razor scooters, hula hoops. And the latest craze that lasted for all about 12 seconds, fidget spinners. Fidget spinners. Oh, it was big just this year. But here's the thing. What we've come to realize with our fads and phases, that no matter how enthusiastically we followed that phase or that fad, it always fades. And today's fad will quite honestly become tomorrow's eye roll to somebody else. Like, are you kidding? Really? I get that a lot from my kids when I talk about back in the day. Really? That's what they all become. And life is always changing. Life is filled with fads, phases, and transitions. Heraclitus, in the old days, in 544 BC, a Greek philosopher is pretty spot on when he said, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." That's deep. It's deep. Because the river's always changing, and the man, woman, is always changing. There's always change. Every single day, change happens, and it happens rapidly. Every day we change because we encounter these new experiences that shape us. I think many of us will not forget 9/11. That's our generation's Pearl Harbor, or, if we remember, it's hard to imagine that on September 10th, we could still walk up to the gate at the airport and greet our loved one and hug them, or walk them to the gate and kiss them goodbye and wave at them as they're walking down the tunnel or coming out of the tunnel. That was September 10th. On September 11th, that changed. But as a matter of fact, it didn't get really implemented for another 3 or 4 days because all of airline traffic got shut down. But when it came back up, now you have to go through this long process. Unless you've been TSA pre-checked or have clear or something like that, you got to wait sometimes for hours. And you have to say goodbye way, way far away, and they can't cross over the red line to go any further, or else they'll get tackled or arrested. All different. All because of one morning in September. And it's changed. And it's changed us. It's changed the way we approach things. It's changed there's a fear in some of the things that we do now. Or there's at least a more alertness. We have our head on a swivel because of that. Every day we encounter people. And those people that we encounter have an influence on us. It could be a good influence. It could be a bad influence. But those people that we come in contact with, they create a change. We read books, we watch movies, we listen to music, we take classes, we travel to places, and all of those things have an impact on our lives. They change us. They either expand our horizon, they narrow things, they change us. So Heraclitus is right. One cannot step into the river twice. The river won't be the same. The man and woman's not the same. Change, transition, seems to be the one thing that is constant in this world. But there is one exception. One major exception. You see, in Hebrews 13, verse 8, it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. When God was talking to Moses at the burning bush, and he says, well, who should I say sending me? He said, say, I am. Because I am is present all the time. Malachi 3:6, God says of himself, for I, the Lord, do not change. So as much as fads change, we change, here's the thing that's very hard for us to wrap our mind around. God is always the same. He never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The author of Lamentations, chapter 3, verse 22, writes, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You know, Robert and I were talking about that this week, and for all the constants and the constant change in our societal trends, you know, the change of fashion, the change of expectations, the change of norms, the change of that's always seems to be evolving, God is always as constant as the sunrise. Now, for those of us who live in the Ohio Valley, that takes some faith, because not every day does it seem like the sun rises, but it does. And God is as constant as the sunrise. Every single day, his love for you and me never ceases. His mercy, thank goodness, for me, is new every morning. Why? Because he's faithful. And that's not just kind of a quality he's picked up. Faithfulness is who he is. You see, there's a lot of things that I can kind of become. I can become good at this or become good at that, or I got this or that. Faithfulness is God. That is his nature. That is who he is. Just like love is not something he does, he is love. 1 John 4:7-8 says that God is love. That is who he is. And it's an important distinction. Because when it comes to us, our faithfulness and our love, you talk about a moving target. What we're faithful to and how we're faithful to, what we love and how we love, what we love, oh, it's always moving. It's all over the place. It's zigging and zagging all the time. So it's hard for us to wrap our mind around that faithfulness is who God is. Love is who God is. Because every time we try to practice love, embrace love, be loved, practice faithfulness, be faithful, it's moving all the time. We just can't wrap our mind around it. But it is such an important distinction. It is who he is. He is faithful and he is love. One of my favorite writers, Paul Tripp, in talking about God's faithfulness, says this: yes, it is true. God will remain faithful even when you're not, because his faithfulness rests on who he is, not on what you're doing. And I can tell you, praise God for that. 2 Timothy 2:13, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, because he can't deny himself. That is who he is. He is faithful. No matter how faithless we are, he cannot deny it is who he is. Paul continues to say, the one who created and controls the world, the one who is the ultimate definition of what is loving, true, and good, and the one who alone has the power to finally defeat sin, has chosen, because of his grace, to wrap his arms of faithful love and protection around you, and he will never let you go. You can take your life off your shoulders because God has placed your life on his. This doesn't mean that it doesn't matter how you live, but that your security is not found in your faithfulness. Your security is found in his. He can be trusted even when you cannot. He will be faithful and good even when we are not. He will do what is right and best even when we don't. And he is faithful to forgive you when convicting grace reveals how unfaithful you've been to him. 70 times 7. The prodigal son. The father who runs to him. That is how faithful he is. And this is good news, because while the river is always changing, and while men and women are never the same, when we step in the river, it changes. It is good news, because while there is always change, transition, phases, and fads that are going around us, God is the same. He never changes. And I want you to think about it, because we tend to get kind of caught up in what we do. But if you go back into history, people then were longing for and looking for the same exact things that we are today. Do you think back then it was hard for do you think guys had it easier? Their eyes weren't roaming around, they weren't lusting, you think that? No, it was the same. You think back then that women weren't wanting to be loved and to be thought of as beautiful, that wasn't something that they were consumed by? Do you think it was different back then? Do you think that security for them was any different than it is for us today? Do you think that back then they didn't want acceptance as much as we want acceptance, to be loved like we want to be loved? You know, if you've started reading your Bible, because January we tend to start over again, so maybe you've started reading your Bible again, or maybe you've decided to start reading it for the first time. But here's the thing, if you started in Genesis and you made it now into Exodus, or wherever you are, here's the thing I'm finding it really interesting. The girls and I, we're going through this As It Happened app by YouVersion. And basically, the Bible's kind of written chronologically. So we started out, with the creation of Genesis. And then we jumped to Job. And Job was like, man, Job is painful. That is a long book, because it's just constantly debating back and forth. But then you get back into Genesis and the story of Joseph. And then you're into the Israelites and Moses and all that stuff. But here's the one thing. when I'm reading it, here's the one thing that jumps out to me. How in the world did God use these people? And why in the world would he want to use those people? Because when I read these stories, I'm like, are you kidding me? And yet we put them on such a pedestal. We think that they were so great. The reality is they are just like us. They doubted. They lied. Boy, did they lie a lot. They fought. They cheated. They stole from one another. They murdered. And there was an awful lot of sex. So welcome back, fellas. All right? Yeah. There is so much stuff that's happened back in the Old Testament that a lot of it, quite frankly, I'm thinking to myself, why did I not learn that at church camp? I don't remember that in VBS. Is that, whoa, that stuff, what? That's in there? But the thing I'm thinking is how? Why? Why would he use them? And then I'm thinking, they're no different than me. And I'm always asking the same thing about me. How, why would he want to use me? You see, the problems haven't changed. The temptations haven't changed. The struggles haven't changed. But neither is God. God is the same. He's the same. And that's good news. Because when I was a kid, God's the same. Back in the day, God was the same. You see, the God of back then is the same as God right now. Right here. Right now. And the entire hope of all humanity rests on this one thing. And that is that we have a Savior, a God who is eternally steadfast in redeeming us, forgiving us, reconciling us, transforming us, and delivering a love that we cannot wrap our mind around to us. And that should bring us comfort. Because in this ever-changing world, we have a never-changing God. Through all the changes, transitions, fads, and phases, one thing remains constant. He never changes. And his steadfast love endures forever. You've heard me say this before, that if God repeats it, it must be important. If it's repeated, then it must mean because he really wants to get our attention. And it's interesting because Psalm 136, there's a lot of repetition. This one stands out of all the others because of the repetition. Matter of fact, it starts off kind of as a history lesson. What you'll see is it's a history lesson. But it ends up becoming a pep rally. Because it's a reminder. And it reminds us time and time again the thing that we desperately need to hear. And what's interesting is we apparently don't need to hear it one time or two times, but 26 times. And so what I want you to do is I want you to read with me Psalm 136. And in the Bibles, if you want to go through the Bibles in front of you, it's on page 546. But it's also going to be up here on the screen. But what I want to do is I want to read the passage. And then what you're going to do is you're going to read together what is in yellow. All right? So Psalm 136. Go ahead and bring up the first slide. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. He alone does great wonders. He made the heavens skillfully. He spread the land on the waters. He made the great lights, the sun to rule by day, the moon and stars to rule by night. He struck the firstborn of the Egyptians and brought Israel out from among them. With a strong hand and outstretched arm, he divided the Red Sea. He divided the Red Sea and led Israel through. but hurled Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea. He led his people in the wilderness. He struck down great kings and slaughtered famous kings. Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, and gave their land as an inheritance to Israel, his servant. He remembered us in our humiliation and rescued us from our foes. He gives food to every creature. Give thanks to the God of heaven. Did you notice a trend? Did you pick up a common theme? His faithful love endures forever. This love is unlike anything we've ever experienced. And we need to constantly and obviously be reminded of that fact. Because in this world, we will never find a faith, a faithfulness, or a love that is steadfast or enduring like his. And what's amazing is we seem to be looking for it everywhere else but in him. I want you to look back at your life at all those fads, all those things, those phases and fads that you purchased, those things that you just had to have, those things that you went through, all those purchases, all those pursuits, all those life experiences. If I could just experience this, if I could just have this, if I could just taste this, if I could just be a part of this, then I will be happy. And I want you to look at that. And I just think about that. Of all those things, have you ever found anything that was steadfast, faithful, and enduring? Cindy and I have been trying to simplify things and declutter our house. And what we have learned as we're getting ready to approach our 30th year of marriage in May is we've accumulated a lot of stuff. And I mean a lot of stuff. And so as we've been going through this, what I've noticed is I'm going through and separating these things that were in these cardboard boxes. I'm putting my hands on a lot of cassettes, a lot of files, a lot of notebook paper, notebooks, a lot of trophies, a lot of memorabilia. Man, this will be worth something someday. A lot of stuff. And I kept it all because I knew that it had redeeming value. I knew that it would change my life or make my life better. I just knew it. And a matter of fact, these things that were so valuable, these things that I worked so hard to acquire or collect during some of the phases of my life, some of these fads and things that I just had to have to pursue and purchase in hopes that would bring me ultimate satisfaction, those things I've found out have found their worthy place of honor in a cardboard box in my basement collecting dust. Now, I'm not going to lie. A lot of that stuff has played a role in shaping me. There's stuff in those boxes that have played a role in making me who I am. There was obviously some value to that item or that object or whatever because I thought I needed to save it. But the reality is where it is right now is very significant. It's very symbolic because it has brought me no redeeming value whatsoever. It may have had a part in who I am, but it does not take the place of the great I am. It doesn't. You may have heard of a lady by the name of Marie Kondo. Marie Kondo, and I have not watched this show, but she's apparently on Netflix, came out in January, where she's teaching people how to simplify and declutter and basically organize their life, teaching them how to pack, because people apparently have never learned how to pack. She's now teaching you how to pack luggage. She's teaching you how to clean your closets, organize all that stuff. Now, I've not watched this show, but she's done this life-changing magic of tidying up, the Japanese art of decluttering and organizing. And here's a couple quotes. Keep only those things that speak to your heart. Then take the plunge and discard all the rest. And by doing this, you can reset your life and embark on a new lifestyle. She also says, if it sparks joy, keep it. Otherwise, throw it or give it away. Through all the phases and all the transitions and all the fads and all those things that we have all acquired in hopes that it would spark joy, the reality is, has it? No. Because the only thing that's truly going to spark joy in our life, the only thing that's truly going to give us the reset that we need, is for us to surrender our heart to the one who created it. To spend everything, to go all in with everything that I am, because the trade-off is so much better when I receive the great I am. Who is steadfast, who is faithful, whose love endures forever, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, who never changes. So throw away the junk of this world, because nothing in this world will speak to your heart like the one who created it and the one who created you. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus, you need a reset. And I want to promise you, there's nothing that will spark joy like he will. Nothing. Through all the changes and phases of life, here's the one thing that's been constant. God has never changed. Oh, there have been many times that I had thought he has left me. There have been many times that I thought he was way far away. But here's the reality. He didn't leave me. I left him. I'm the one that went off on the journey, because he is the same. The same God of then is the same God of right now. His love is steadfast. He is faithful, and it endures forever. And so we begin this series called It's a Phase, and how each phase matters. But I kind of want to leave you with just some things to think through, and so I'm just going to kind of throw these out. And the first one is maybe just, I'll tell you what, just bow your heads right now, because this will help you maybe get rid of all the distractions. And I'm just going to ask you a couple things. The first thing is for you to take a personal inventory right now, to really look at your life, the phases, the fads. What are the things in your life that you are relying so heavily on right now? Where God might be saying instead, you need to get rid of that junk. You need to declutter, because it's not your answer. I am. What is that stuff? What is that junk that you need to get rid of? Because he's the answer. And if you're not sure, maybe on the ride home you can ask your loved one that you came with, because they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you. Another thing, since we're talking about phases, is maybe you need to ask God as we move into the phases. We just went through the 5 generations that are represented at church. And so maybe for you, you need to have God point out to you some prejudices or misconceptions that you have of people that are not in the same generation or age of you. You know, we live in a world right now where if we would all just start to begin to assume the best in people instead of assume the worst in people, it'd be a different world just like that. So I don't know what generation you represent, but are there people in other generations that you just don't give the time of day to because of your misconceptions about them or your prejudices towards them? If that's the case, maybe you need to ask God to point that out to you. Maybe you need to go out of your way to actually begin a relationship and spend time with someone who's in a different life phase than you are. Someone who you can better understand, who will help you and you can help them and you can learn from them. And in college, they used to always say that we needed to have relationships with a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy, because the Apostle Paul, he was a smart guy. And so you want to have that Paul in your life who's going to challenge you, who's going to cause you to step up, who's going to really raise your game. But then you need a Barnabas, because Barnabas he was Mr. Encouragement. He was like, keep on going, keep on going. You know, you need that Barnabas in your life that's just going to stay with you side by side. But then you also need that Timothy in your life, and that is that young person that you need to speak into their life. Mentor them. So maybe you need to think of some people right now that aren't in the same life phase you are, and how you can help them. And then finally, this may be a challenge for some of us, but it might be good just to get up early in the morning before the sunrise and read Psalm 136 and be reminded that his faithful love endures forever. And he is as constant with his mercy, and they are new every morning. And so maybe for you that's what you need to do. Maybe you just need to spend some time in the morning before the sun comes up reading that reminder of Psalm 136 or Lamentations 3. I'm going to pray. I'm just going to ask you to pray with me, and whatever God has kind of laid on you, just to not just keep it here, but to take it with you. And if you're someone who's come here tonight and you need prayer, we have people that would love to pray with you. If you're someone here tonight that you've been pursuing all the wrong things, all the wrong people, all the wrong stuff, then I'm going to challenge you to accept the one thing that will be the reset that matters, and that is to accept Jesus. And if you want to do that, come forward. We will talk to you about that as well. So I'm going to pray and then ask you to respond. God, thank you so much just for the reminder that while things are spinning around us all the time and things are flying at us all the time, that you are the one constant. You're the one thing we can anchor onto. Jesus talks about that the rains and the storms will come. It's not a matter of if. We will have rains and storms that are going to come. And that those of us who build our house on sand, that foundation will collapse. It will not withstand it. But if we build our foundation on the rock, the solid rock, if we build our foundation on you and on your word, then when those rains and those storms and those winds whip up, while it may batter us, it will not move us, because we are anchored to you, the God who's faithful, unchanging, and his love. And there's no greater demonstration of who you are and the love that you have shown than your Son, Jesus Christ, and what he did so that we can have this relationship with you through his sacrifice. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. One quick thing before we sing, and again, give you an opportunity to come and pray. Last Friday, something happened that was brought to our attention about something that was happening in this community. And if you're a regular Thursday night attender, this happened after we met Thursday, so you didn't get a chance to hear it. But one of the things that we did is we sent out an email. And if you've not received this email, I'm just going to tell you a little bit up front what's going on. And whether you came prepared to do this, or even if you feel compelled to do this, is entirely up to you. But it was brought to our attention last week that a young man by the name of Nate Watson, who plays for Batavia High School, he's a senior this year, was diagnosed with, I believe it's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, if not Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's Hodgkin's lymphoma. He has continued to play even while he's been taking chemo. He's shown great boldness. But one of the things that we read was that tomorrow night at Batavia High School, that the high school, Batavia's playing Goshen, that it's kind of their last, I think it's the last home game of the season. They wanted to do a night called Win for Watson. And they've invited people to come, and all of the stuff that's being collected at the gate is all being donated to Nate and his family to help defray some of the medical expenses. Well, one of the things that we talked about last week is to be bold. And if you've been around us for a while, you know this is true. If not, this is who we are. We've always been a church that has done things because it was the right thing to do. And we've always been a church that has done things with no strings attached. And so one of the things that we decided to do as a leadership, and it was a quick decision, is, we want to help this family out. We don't even know if this family goes to a church. We don't know. We don't know any of those details, but what we do know is a community is coming around this family, and we have always said from the very beginning that this church wants to be an asset to a community, not a liability to one. That this church wants to do what is right in this community to make this community better. And this is one opportunity we have to come alongside this community to do what we can to help this family and make it better. We are not doing this to bring any attention to ourselves. If anything, we're doing this to bring attention to Jesus. And so we've decided to do this over the weekend. There's also, you could do it online. So if you weren't prepared or you didn't bring cash or change, you can go online and there's a drop down that says Win for Watson where you can make a donation there. And I believe just over that last weekend, just with very short notice, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,700 that has already been raised. And so, we're hoping to push it over $5,000 if possible. And it's amazing because this is someone that this church doesn't even know. But it's an amazing act of generosity. And the one thing we did do last Sunday is we took a picture of each service, not because it's going on social media, because I said this to them and I'll say this to you. We do not want to post this stuff on social media because we do not want it to look as if we are trying to, get our name out there in this kid's poor tragedy. If their family decides they want to post something, then it's on there because they posted it. But none of us are posting it on Twitter or Facebook because it's not about us, it's about him and it's about him. And so some people have asked, well, what about other people? Well, first of all, if we're aware of needs in this church, we do try to help. But the other thing is if we waited to do for everybody the same, we would end up doing nothing for anybody. And so this is an opportunity right now that we have to be able to help this family. And I'll tell you, as a pastor, this is another difference about our church, is because of the weather we've had the last few weeks, we're behind in our giving. We're behind in where our budget should be. Most pastors and most leaderships would never do this because they know that this money that's going to be given tonight would probably be deferred from the general budget. But we don't care. Because if it's the right thing to do, we're going to trust God. So, having said that, I want to pray for the Watson family. Casey's going to take a picture wherever she is. She's over there. But I want to pray for the Watson family. If you want to be there tomorrow night, it's at 7:30 at Batavia. They asked to wear purple because purple is the color that represents that cancer. So what we did, and again, really quick, is we ordered a bunch of purple shirts. You know how we had these crossing shirts? Well, we decided we're going to get purple ones and have the crossing orange so they really look like Clemson, which kind of ticks Jay off because he's an Alabama fan. But we don't have Nate's name on it because, again, we don't want to look like we're trying to, promote ourselves with this. But it does have our logo and our mission statement there. And what we'd like for you to do is if you want to buy that, we're actually raising the price because all the proceeds are also going to be made payable to the Watson family. So when they come in Friday or the next weekend, if you want to pick up one of those shirts, I don't even know what the price is going to be, but the money, the profits and that is going straight to the Watson family. So let me pray for them, and then we're going to pass the bucket, which we never do here. So if you want to put some in, it's going to the win one for Watson, and we'll just go. So God,